What are the business indicators that you've noticed are there that ultimately predict or really illustrate the hidden chasm concept?
Probably the most prominent one for me is the culture of chasing squirrels. Squirrels with dollar signs on their back. You're in an organization that seems to be driven by chasing revenue. And then when new revenue comes up, they pivot and they chase the next one and the next one and the next one.
One off.
One off. Yeah. And what you tend to see is without that binding strategy, you start to see the technical approach fracture because the team is in whiplash mode. Their jobs are to keep their head above water and just deliver. And it loses continuity of what is our product, our solution, our value stream, our path, our purpose. It doesn't mean that doesn't ever change or that it doesn't pivot inside of there. What you see is that start to fracture and it becomes competition inside the organization chasing the biggest promise of dollars in business, which means technical excellence suffers. And then you start to see it fracture at the team level. Because what does the team do? The team responds. I'm going to use the word cut corners because I don't think most engineers want to cut corners. Most of them want to be professionals. It's survival mode. I think for me, that is the earliest tell that I see in organizations. You start seeing that behavior happening above, and it has anti-pattern effects down at the team level that you won't see for months because it doesn't happen the first time you do it. You don't see impacts the second time you do it. Heck, you don't even see impacts the third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, the first year, 2 years you do it.
Right.
What you're going to realize is 2 years, 24 months, 36 months down the road, stuff ain't working. And it's not something they did last week, last sprint, last month. It's something the organization started to do years before.
What about, you were making a distinction between that and general indicators. Did you have a thought there?
Yeah. So you start to see the teams behaving like factories or treated like factories. So it goes a little bit back to like Frederick Taylor's scientific rules of management back at the industrial age, right? You have managers get paid to get smart, be smart. And how do we take the craftsmanship out?
Yeah. And if you're not managed and left to your own devices, only bad things will happen.
Yeah, only bad things could happen, right? We don't want craftsmen or expertise. We just need human cogs in the machine. And I think there's still a holdover, even in fairly decent agile organizations, there's still this holdover that you can still just plug people into the cog, right? You can structure them that way. So I think at the business level, you see some business behaviors, but at the team level, you see them at the tail end of that, like just it's a factory. We put our wish list in and magically stuff comes out the other end and just keep pushing features. And it's not sustainable. It's not sustainable for the long term. And I guess eventually you wind up at the Thelma and Louise moment at the chasm.
I've always found the moment, especially when it's financial data, that usually gets attended quite a bit faster.
When is it not financial data, though? People are always like, Agile is a process for speed. It's an economic mindset. Every time you have a choice to spend team, dollar, and time on something that adds value or subtracts value from your organization, choose wisely.
Right. I'm curious, when you think about, you mentioned a few of the levers you pull in order to start righting the ship here. So speak more about that. Okay, you've made it clear to them from a leadership perspective. And actually, this is a question, is especially for you guys, because you're coming in as an agile practice. And traditionally, a lot of executives may not recognize that that's a systemic organizational thing. They might sort of view that. I'm sure you run into this. You're going to work with my product teams, right? Or my dev teams. And so do you sometimes find that there's an expansion of footprint that needs to occur in order to help actually right the ship? And how does that conversation usually go?
Oh, geez.
Like, I really need to talk to you, Mr. Executive, even though you might not realize that I do.
So this should be no surprise to you or your listeners. Agility comes into organizations basically two ways, top down or bottom up. So if it's a grassroots, that's a little bit harder of an effort. A lot of times it's a small experiment that was given permission as long as you don't talk to the layers above it. But the minute you start pressing on that, or if you press on that in the wrong way, you're always using agile language and you're trying to get the executives to do Scrum. Like, that doesn't work. That's not what they're worried about. So somewhere on there, there's a pivot to draw them into the conversation to understand if the team is playing by these rules, these are the rules that the business can use to help them to generate value better. And by the way, here's kind of the expanded picture of business agility. It's not just team agility. There's technical excellence. There's dev and operations excellence. There's architectural excellence. There's product and portfolio management that drives decisions. So a lot of times in that bottom-up model, it's slower, but you start working your way kind of across that broader spectrum by pulling people into business conversations, outcome conversations, not agile conversations, right?
Right.
The other one, when it comes in from top down, that's usually a little bit better because our first conversation is usually based on a why for agile versus a what for agile. Moving to agile because you want to do events, frameworks, ceremonies, you just want to do Scrum because it's what everyone else is doing is wrong. You're not going to succeed on that. You're going to get results you don't want to do. On that one there, we usually have some sort of leadership year. We have usually done some sort of leadership training. We have some sort of executive action team that's responsible for the results of the transformation, right? And they're designees who are empowered to do that. So in that model there, they have the hard conversations up front. We have a compelling reason why in the organization, and we're tracking back to those metrics, those KPIs for them. That lets us have better conversations. It really depends on, is it the uphill slog? Are we rolling the boulder up the hill? Or do we have blessing and approval going in and they want it out? It doesn't mean they take action or can take action or is now the right time, but the news tends to go a little bit better that way.